I heard him say I wasn't worth saving. Lying there in that hospital bed, tubes down my throat and my body paralyzed by illness, I couldn't speak, I couldn't move, but I heard every word. His voice. Cold and dismissive. Like I was just an old shoe he didn't feel like fixing. "Don't waste the money," he told the doctor. "She's not that important." That moment shattered something in me far deeper than flesh or bone. My name is Amanda, and once upon a time I believed in love. Real love. The kind that makes vows, builds futures, and stands by you when life hits hard. I was that woman, the one who poured everything into her marriage, who cooked, cleaned, supported, sacrificed, believing that one day when it was my turn to lean, he'd be there to hold me up. But when sickness knocked me to the ground, I learned that the man I called husband had already let go. I remember the day everything started to change. It was slow at first, fatigue I couldn't shake, strange aches that came and went. At first I brushed it off. I was just tired, overworked, maybe stressed. He said the same thing. "Stop exaggerating," he snapped one night when I told him I needed to see a specialist. "You're always complaining about something." So I stayed quiet. Until the night I collapsed in the kitchen. One moment I was washing dishes. The next, the world spun and my legs gave out beneath me. My husband found me unconscious and called an ambulance, but not because he cared. No, later I realized it was more about saving face than saving me. They rushed me to the hospital. I was barely alive. The doctors needed immediate authorization to perform a high-risk surgery. The bill was steep, but the money was there. In our joint account. Money I helped save, scrimped, and contributed to for over a decade. But when they called him, he shook his head. "I heard it, God, I heard it." He laughed, shrugged, and said, "I'm not draining our account for someone who might not make it anyway. It's not worth it." That moment burned into my soul. I was drifting between life and death, and the man I built my life with stood at the edge, choosing to let me fall. But the universe had other plans. Doctors made the call to proceed. A kind nurse, perhaps a miracle in disguise, signed off the emergency waiver. I went under the knife with a shattered heart, but a fighting spirit still buried somewhere deep inside me. And against every odds stacked against me, I survived. They say the body heals faster than the heart. And when I woke up in that hospital room days later, stitched and sore but alive, I realized just how true that was. The moment I opened my eyes, the white ceiling above me blurred through the pain, but the memory of his voice, his betrayal, was crystal clear. He said no. I whispered, my voice barely a breath. The nurse leaned over with a soft smile as if trying to spare me the truth. But I wasn't imagining things. I knew what I'd heard. I had felt every ounce of that rejection echo through my soul, even in the coma. I wasn't hallucinating. "He wasn't sure you'd make it," she said gently. "But you're a fighter, Amanda." Fighter. That word stuck to me like a second skin. The surgery had been risky. I was told there were moments they thought they'd lost me. I had a severe infection in my brain and lungs, and without immediate intervention I would have died. But a miracle, or maybe just the kindness of one brave nurse, had kept me alive. And still he never came. Not once. Not a single call, not a visit, not even flowers. My husband, the man I'd built a life with, vanished like I was already dead. I spent 2 weeks recovering, the silence more painful than the incisions across my chest. My body trembled from the aftershocks of surgery, but it was my mind that felt paralyzed. How do you wrap your head around the fact that someone who vowed to love you in sickness and in health could leave you to die? I cried alone every night. I stared at the empty doorway waiting for him. And when my discharge day came, I didn't even bother asking. Instead, my sister flew in from Seattle. She'd found out through a mutual friend, shocked that I'd been hospitalized and nobody told her. She stood at the foot of my hospital bed, her face pale with rage. "Where the hell is Marcus?" she demanded. "How could he leave you here like this?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat. I hadn't even told her the worst part, that he refused to pay for the treatment. That I'd almost died because of his choice. That truth was still too heavy. But I knew one thing, I couldn't go back home. Not to him. Not to that house that suddenly felt like a graveyard of my trust. So I stayed with my sister. Recovery was brutal. I had to learn how to walk again slowly. My muscles had weakened, my lungs needed oxygen for weeks, and emotionally I was shattered. But my sister, God bless her, became my anchor. "You're going to be okay," she told me every single morning. "You didn't die. That means you have a purpose. And he doesn't get to be a part of it anymore." Still, despite her support, I needed answers. Closure. I needed to see him. So one day I went back, not to beg, not to reconcile, but to confront him. I wanted to look in his eyes and ask why. I arrived at our house. The lawn was overgrown. My garden had died from neglect. And parked in the driveway was a sleek red sports car I didn't recognize. My heart dropped. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. The door swung open, held by a woman I'd never seen before. Young. Maybe 25. Wearing my silk robe. "Oh," she said, surprised. "You must be Amanda." I froze. She already knew who I was. "I didn't think you'd show up. Marcus said you were." She stopped herself, biting her lip. "Dead." I finished for her. Her face flushed. I didn't wait for an explanation. I pushed past her into my home. Every picture of me was gone from the walls. The living room was redecorated. My favorite mug was missing. My books boxed up. He had already moved on. Not after I healed. Not after a divorce. No. While I was in the hospital fighting for my life, he had replaced me. Marcus walked in from the kitchen with a wine glass in his hand, looking like he'd just come back from vacation. "Amanda," he said flatly. "I wasn't expecting you. You thought I'd stay dead, didn't you?" I whispered. He shrugged. "You made it. Good for you." No apology. No remorse. Not even guilt in his eyes. Just indifference. "I heard you," I said. "In the hospital. When the doctors asked about the surgery. You said I wasn't worth it." He didn't even flinch. "I had to make a decision," he said. "You were barely alive. It was logical." Logical. I spat. "I gave you 10 years of my life. I stood by you through unemployment, debt, your mother's death, and you couldn't even try to save me." He sighed, annoyed. "Amanda, we both know our marriage was falling apart. You were sick. I couldn't carry that burden forever." That was the last thing I needed to hear. Not that he was sorry. Not that he regretted it. But that I had become a burden. I left without another word. That night something changed in me. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was a woman reborn. He left me for dead. He replaced me without guilt. But he had no idea who I was about to become. And that's when the real story began. It all started a few months before the hospital incident. Things had been strange with Lucas. Distant. Cold. He used to kiss my forehead every morning before work, used to bring me coffee just the way I liked it. Light, 2 sugars, extra cream. But slowly those things stopped. At first I thought it was just stress. He'd been working longer hours, staying later at the office, barely eating dinner with me. When I asked if he was okay, he'd give me that forced smile and say, "Everything's fine, babe. Just tired." But I knew better. A woman always knows. I could feel the shift in the way he looked at me, like I was invisible. Like I wasn't enough. We had a joint account because we always agreed on transparency. We'd built that account over the years, each of us contributing, growing it together, dreaming of the life we'd build with it. A house in the suburbs. Kids someday. Maybe a beach vacation. It wasn't just money, it was our shared future. Then I started getting sick. It began with random fatigue. My body felt heavy, like it was trying to tell me something I didn't understand. Then came the pain, crippling abdominal cramps that left me curled up in bed, drenched in sweat, teeth clenched through the agony. I went to the ER twice, and both times Lucas made excuses not to come. "The boss needs me," he'd say, or "traffic's a nightmare." Still, I defended him. I always defended him. One night the pain got so bad I collapsed in the kitchen. I remember the cold tiles against my cheek, the way my breath came in shallow gasps. The paramedics came. I barely remember the ride to the hospital, only flashes of light, the sirens wailing above my head like some kind of funeral march. That's when everything changed. I was diagnosed with internal bleeding caused by a ruptured ovarian cyst. My condition was critical. I needed immediate surgery. The hospital called Lucas, told him the situation, told him they needed consent and payment from our joint account. And that's when he said it. "She's not that important." Those were his exact words. The nurse told me later with tears in her eyes after I'd regained full consciousness. At the time I was in and out, lost in a fog of anesthesia and pain, but I heard him. Deep in the part of my mind that wasn't ready to give up, I heard him say it. Dismissive. Like I was disposable. They told me he left the hospital and didn't return. But something in me refused to die. I don't know what it was, spite, strength, or pure will, but I fought. I clawed my way back to life through the tubes, the machines, the sterile white walls. I survived. And when I opened my eyes and saw the pity in the nurse's face, I knew something else had died in that hospital bed. My love for Lucas. My loyalty. My need to be anyone's second choice. The doctor told me later that a kind stranger in the ER that night heard the nurse arguing with Lucas and stepped in. She'd seen my condition and insisted on covering the initial payment so they could operate. "No one should die just because someone else is too heartless to care," she said. To this day I don't even know her name. But I owe her my life. I spent 2 weeks recovering in the hospital. Lucas never showed. Never called. Not even a text. When I finally got home, the apartment was eerily empty. His clothes were gone. His Xbox. His cologne. Just like that, he vanished from my life like I was an inconvenience. But what he didn't take was the bank account. Or so he thought. I logged in, shaking, fully expecting it to be empty. It wasn't. Turns out, Lucas was too much of a coward to drain it outright. He'd only removed his portion, thinking I'd die and the rest would just vanish. But what he didn't know was that I'd been depositing more than he ever realized. Side gigs, consulting, even royalties from a book I ghostwrote once. It was mine now. All of it. He left me for dead. But I came back stronger than ever. And I wasn't just going to move on, I was going to rebuild, reclaim, and rewrite the ending he thought he authored. Recovery wasn't just physical. It was spiritual, emotional, and mental. The first week after I left the hospital was hell. I could barely walk without flinching. The stitches hurt. The silence hurt even more. My apartment was still like time had frozen in it. But not in a nostalgic way, in a haunted, abandoned way. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how a man I loved for 4 years could vanish from my life in an instant. Just disappear. No closure. No apology. No explanation. Not even a voicemail. But pain is a strange thing. If you sit with it long enough, it starts to whisper. And mine whispered this: he never deserved you. So I did what broken women do when they finally decide they've had enough. I reinvented myself. I closed my heart, but I opened my mind. I'd been a freelance writer working from home mostly. Lucas used to call it cute, like it was a hobby, not a real job. I remember one time I told him I landed a huge client. His response: "That's nice, babe. Can we talk about something real though? Like his promotion. Or the new car he wanted. Or his weekend poker game." But I had always underestimated my own power. I was good at what I did. I just hadn't pushed far enough. That changed quickly. By the end of my 3rd week home, I'd signed 3 new long-term contracts. I stopped waiting for someone to choose me and started choosing myself. I changed my number. Blocked Lucas on everything. Instagram, Facebook, Gmail, even LinkedIn. I wasn't interested in giving him even a pixel of access to my new life. Then I took it a step further. I moved. Sold most of the furniture. Rented a cozy apartment closer to the city. It was smaller, sure, but it felt mine. Every picture frame, every scented candle, every curtain was picked for me. Not for us. And then came the glow-up. Not for revenge. Not to make him jealous. But to remind me who I was before him, and who I was becoming now. Kept my hair sleek, bold. I traded in soft pastels for rich jewel tones. Went back to the gym not to get hot, but to feel strong again. I walked taller. Laughed louder. I even started recording voiceovers of motivational pieces I wrote, just uploading them to a tiny YouTube channel. I didn't expect much. But people started finding them. And they were listening. Commenting. Sharing. I needed this today. This saved me from a dark place. You don't know me, but your story helped me leave a toxic relationship. That channel became therapy. My pain turned into purpose. But then life, being the poetic thing it is, brought him back. It started with an anonymous email. No subject line. No body text. Just a photo attachment. It was of me, one of my old Instagram photos back when Lucas and I were on vacation. Except, someone had edited out Lucas's face and captioned it, "Some people don't know what they lost until it's too late." Creepy, right? At first I ignored it. Assumed it was spam. But they kept coming. Emails. Voicemails from random numbers. All vague. All clearly him. And then one night while I was walking back from a cafe I saw him, Lucas, standing across the street like a ghost that had clawed its way out of my memories. He looked ruined. Haggard. Thin. That cocky glow he used to carry was gone. I froze. For a moment I couldn't breathe. He didn't cross the street. He just stared. Like he didn't know what to say. Like I was something sacred he had defiled, and now he couldn't even beg for redemption. And honestly, that was better than any apology. I turned and walked away. Head high. Spine straight. I didn't owe him a word. But he wasn't done. A few days later a letter showed up at my office mailbox. One I'd never given him. I guess he must have stalked me enough to find it. Inside was a handwritten note. I didn't think they were serious when they called. I thought you'd be fine. I was scared. I know I failed you. But not a day goes by I don't regret it. You look amazing. I'm proud of you, even if I don't deserve to be. L. That used to be how he signed his notes. Just an L. I read the letter once. Folded it. Threw it in the shredder. Because he didn't get to say he was proud of me. Not now. Not after what he did. That pride belonged to me. Not to the man who left me bleeding in a hospital bed, but to the woman who rose from it, stronger, brighter, unbreakable. I was no longer the girl who begged for love. I was the woman who became her own home. And I was just getting started. Strange how life works. Sometimes when you think you've lost everything, your health, your dignity, your marriage, you realize what you've really lost was just dead weight. Months had passed since that night in the hospital. Since I lay there weak and trembling, learning the painful truth that the man I loved, Lucas, refused to pay for the surgery that would have saved me. I'd replayed the moment over and over again in my mind like a cruel film. The look on his face when he said, "She's not worth it." It haunted me. Not because it broke my heart, but because it revealed everything I never wanted to believe about him. After I was discharged from the hospital, I didn't go home. I couldn't. That house was built on lies. Every wall echoed with betrayal. I stayed with an old college friend, Mia, who took me in without question. She helped me eat, helped me walk again, helped me cry. There were nights I'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, gripping the sheets as if they were the only thing anchoring me to this earth. I was healing, but not just physically. I was remembering who I was before Lucas. Before I gave up my dreams, my voice, my sense of self. All to please a man who thought love was something you measured in usefulness. At Mia's place, something beautiful happened. I picked up my journal again. Before Lucas, I used to write. Fiction. Poetry. Raw thoughts. I had once dreamed of becoming an author. But marriage, responsibilities, and being the perfect wife killed that dream, or so I thought. One afternoon I opened my laptop and just wrote. My pain poured out through my fingers like water bursting through a broken dam. And without meaning to, I wrote a story. Not exactly mine, but close. A woman betrayed by the man she trusted most. A woman left to die who found her voice again. I posted a small excerpt online anonymously, just to get it out. To my surprise, it exploded. People resonated with it. Women wrote in droves, "This is me. I've been there. Thank you for putting my pain into words." And then, something I never saw coming happened. A small publishing company reached out and asked if I had more. Within weeks, I had a book deal in my hands. I could hardly believe it. After being tossed aside like I didn't matter, I was now being seen, heard, valued. The same woman Lucas left to die was now inspiring others to live. But the best part? Lucas's life was unraveling, quietly, deliciously, and without my help. Mia and I were having coffee one morning when she tilted her phone toward me and said, "You might want to see this." It was a news article, small but satisfying. Lucas's company was failing. Spectacularly. Apparently he had been making shady deals, overspending and alienating clients since I left. Turns out I was the glue. The organized mind behind the scenes. The calm in the chaos. Without me, everything he touched turned to ash. The cherry on top? That joint account, the one he had once refused to touch for my surgery, was still legally half mine. He never removed my name. Probably thought he'd always be the one in control. But now, I had a lawyer. A smart one. A fierce one. And with a single court filing I froze the account. Lucas couldn't access a dime until we sorted the finances legally. When the ruling came in, I received half of what was left in the account. A poetic justice. Not out of spite but because I earned it. I helped build his empire and I would not walk away empty-handed. I remember the day the funds hit my new account. I sat quietly by the lake, phone in hand, watching the confirmation message load. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I just smiled to myself and whispered, "That's for me." Lucas, on the other hand, didn't take it so well. A few days later, I received a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to look. It was him. Lucas. He'd found my book. His message. Wow. Couldn't even change the story enough to hide it was me, huh? You really want the whole world to think I'm a monster. I stared at his words. So self-absorbed. So fragile. Not a word about what he did to me. Not a word about the night he turned his back on me when I was clinging to life. I replied with just one sentence. I didn't need to make you the villain. Your actions did that for you. And then with zero hesitation I blocked his number. That was the last time he'd ever have access to me. I wasn't his wife anymore. I wasn't his emotional punching bag. I wasn't his convenience. I was me again. The woman who loved deeply. Who fought hard. Who nearly died for someone who wouldn't lift a finger to save her. But came back stronger than he could ever imagine. Lucas may have buried the old me. But the woman who rose from that grave? She was unstoppable. When the news of Lucas's arrest hit the media, it spread like wildfire. His perfectly curated image shattered in a single day. The charming financial guru, the respected entrepreneur, the man who once stood tall at charity galas and investment summits, now reduced to mugshots and scandal headlines. Fraud. Embezzlement. Insurance manipulation. Every dirty secret came crawling into daylight. But me. I stayed quiet. No press statements. No public clapbacks. I didn't need the world to know what he did to me. The truth was already loud enough without my voice. Besides, I had already screamed enough in silence while lying in that hospital bed. I was finally breathing freely. I was healing body, mind, and spirit. Then came the call. A restricted number. My heart skipped. For a second I thought maybe it was one of the reporters. But no. I knew this voice. It was Lucas. His voice cracked like an old record that hadn't been played in years. Weak. Hesitant. Like he wasn't sure I'd even pick up. I almost hung up. Almost. But something in me, maybe closure, made me stay on the line. I made a mistake, he said quickly. I was scared. The debts. The pressure. I wasn't thinking straight. Stop. I cut him off coldly. You weren't scared, Lucas. You were calculating. You knew I was dying and you chose your finances over my life. He didn't speak. I could hear his shallow breathing. Could almost feel the panic through the phone. You had access to our joint account. You could have saved me. I gave everything to our marriage. My love, my loyalty, my trust. And you gave me abandonment. While I lay unconscious, you walked away and hoped I'd die. I'm sorry, he whispered. I shook my head even though he couldn't see me. I'm not calling for forgiveness, he added. I lost everything. They froze my assets. The company's gone. My partners testified against me. And the house. Our house, I interrupted. He paused. Right, he said weakly. Our house. It's gone too. A bitter silence settled between us. For the first time he sounded small. Like a man who finally realized the damage he caused. But I didn't feel pity. I felt peace. Lucas, I said softly, I prayed for healing, not revenge. I never imagined karma would answer both at the same time. And then I hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to him. In the months that followed, my life changed, not because of Lucas's downfall but because of my rise. I completed my therapy sessions and regained full mobility. I started walking again without help. Not just physically but emotionally too. I launched a wellness group for women recovering from medical and emotional trauma. The support was overwhelming. My inbox was flooded with stories just like mine. Women who had been discarded when they were most vulnerable. I used my story not as a badge of pain but as proof of survival. One day I walked past the upscale restaurant where Lucas used to brag about closing million-dollar deals. I paused by the window. Inside, people laughed over wine and oysters. The kind of people Lucas once tried so hard to impress. But none of them knew him now. And none of them knew me. I smiled to myself. Because I knew who I was. Amanda, the woman he left to die. The woman who came back stronger. The woman who no longer needed his name, his money, or his approval to breathe. It's been a year since Lucas walked out of that hospital room and out of my life. I don't mark the anniversary with sadness. I mark it with gratitude, because that was the moment I stopped dying and started living. Today I wake up without fear. I breathe deeply. I smile more. And when I look in the mirror, I no longer see the broken woman he left behind. I see myself, whole, radiant, and undefeated. I bought a small house by the lake. Nothing extravagant but peaceful. It's the kind of place that lets you hear your thoughts and silence your past. I filled it with light, music, and laughter. Things Lucas never gave me. Every morning I walk barefoot across my porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise like it's greeting me personally. That's how I know I survived. Not just the illness but the betrayal too. I started painting again. Funny how I had forgotten what joy felt like between brushstrokes and colors. Lucas hated my art. Said it was a waste of time. Now my work hangs in 3 local galleries and I've taught painting workshops to over 50 women who, like me, needed a place to express their pain without words. And the best part? I'm not bitter. You'd think I'd hold on to the anger, squeeze it until it burned in my veins. But I don't. Because I learned that forgiveness isn't for them. It's for us. I forgave Lucas, not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Letting go of the hate made room for something else to grow. Me. I got a letter a few weeks ago. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Lucas. He wrote from prison. Told me he reads my blog, the one where I share healing stories. He said he recognized one of the stories as mine and that it opened his eyes. Claimed he's trying to be a better man. Maybe he is. Maybe it's guilt. But as I read those pages, my hand didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. I just felt nothing. And that's when I realized I'd truly healed. When the man who once had the power to destroy me, now couldn't even disrupt my peace. I didn't reply. Some stories don't need a sequel. Last month I was asked to speak at a women's conference. My first keynote. As I stepped on that stage, I looked out at hundreds of faces, all waiting to hear my story. Not his. Mine. So I told them about the betrayal. The fear. The moment I almost died and the moment I chose to live. I shared the pain and then I shared the triumph. And when I finished, the room stood for me. Not because I was a victim, but because I was a survivor who became a voice for others. And as I walked off that stage, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Fulfillment. Not the kind that comes from applause, but the kind that comes from rising, again and again, no matter how many times life tries to push you down. So if you're listening to this right now, maybe you've been left behind. Maybe someone you loved made you feel like you didn't matter. Maybe you're carrying wounds so deep you're scared they'll never heal. Let me tell you something from one woman to another. You are not their discard. You are your own rescue. The moment you choose yourself, the moment you stop begging them to stay, that's the moment your real life begins. Lucas left me to die. But in the end I lived. And not just lived, I flourished. Because I am Amanda. And this is my comeback story. If this story touched something deep in you, if you've ever been betrayed, broken, or left behind, remember you're not alone. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories of strength, survival, and sweet revenge. Your story isn't over. It's just getting started.